At the break, right now down by about 20. It's time for Untitled Boston Sports tonight. Abbreviated segment here. We're going to get you up to Celtics post-game live as soon as that game's over. Tom Giles, Michael Hawley, Danielle Trotta, DJ Bean.
Wow.
This is it. It's the end of the road for the 2018-2019 Celtics.
It's over. It's over. And I was asking you earlier and some other people in the studio, can you think of a more disappointing Celtics team of the last 20 years? And I can't. And the team that I came up with was the 1998 or 1999 Celtics under Rick Pitino.
Yeah, and
because Pitino was supposed to come in and turn this franchise around, and he turned out to be fraudulent, and it didn't happen. But that's 20 years ago.
Yeah,
so,
and also with a head coach, you think, okay, maybe he'll help turn around the franchise. He'll need the players. This team had the players.
This team had the players.
And the coach.
And the coach.
I mean, it was this time last year, the optimism. They're still alive. This time last year, they beat the Milwaukee Bucks in round 1. They beat Philadelphia in round 2, and they had a lead on the Cavaliers. They had a lead on the Cavaliers.
They were an okay Jaylen Brown game away, or an okay Terry Rozier. One of those guys has a good game 7. They're in the NBA Finals last year.
Like Terry Rozier last year, was he scoreless? Was he 0 in Game 7? The boys,
right.
Terry Rozier and Marcus Smart, bad shooting last year.
But that doesn't happen in the NBA Finals.
And that's less than a year ago. And now here we are talking about this team. And I think, Danielle, the #1 thing they have to do, and this is a little too touchy-feely for some, blaming the soul of the Celtics, because they have no soul, they have no heart, they have no passion, and it is so tough to knowing that they just don't. How many times have we said this year? They don't play hard enough. They don't play hard enough.
There's a couple of guys that do.
They don't play together enough. They're not on the same page. They're disjointed. It's really disappointing to watch.
It's an embarrassing end to a really disappointing season. And, you know, just to come out with lackluster effort at the start of the game tonight, I mean, you could just tell early in the first they didn't have it. Like, shot selection was bad. Defense, I mean, they held Milwaukee for a bit in the first, but they were just unable to capitalize on runs down in the first, down at the half, down in the third. I mean, they just never... They didn't make a statement this game. Like, it was do or die. We're not going on vacation. We're going to do what we have to do. And you just didn't see that.
This had to be the game where they came out and absolutely blew the doors off the Bucks. Instead, in the first half, we're saying, I think they need to sit Kyrie for the rest of this game. Because there were moments in the first half where we were like, what the hell is going on with Kyrie? This isn't he's not having a dominant game. This isn't he's getting outplayed by better players by worse players on the other team. This is like he's the worst guy on the floor right now.
But since we've come on the air, maybe Kyrie has jacked up a few more shots.
Well, he's on the bench right now. He's on the end of the bench.
All right, well, in the last 2 games, 13 for 43 from the field for Kyrie Irving, a guy who told us, hey, don't worry about the regular season. Wait till we get to the playoffs. It's going to be better this year because I'm here. And you talked about, you know, vacation, Danielle, and the urgency of the Celtics. Midway through the 3rd quarter, Celtics analyst on the radio on 98.5, Cedric Maxwell said, I'm fighting not to go on vacation. I'm trying to keep this thing alive. Okay, the problem is he's in the broadcast booth. Yeah. He's fighting in the broadcast booth, but nobody on the court is fighting to avoid going on vacation.
And you want to point to just a 1-minute stretch where you're like, oh my God.
The 900 offensive rebounds for the Bucks?
Yeah. It was 5 or 6 offensive rebounds for Milwaukee. They had the ball for over a minute. They actually didn't even score.
Right.
But they had the ball for over a minute. I mean, 5 or 6 offensive rebounds in the NBA? Like,
13-point game, I was like, they're going to run out the clock just on offensive rebounds on these guys.
And part of it is, and I said this right before we came up, like, the Bucks aren't even playing well tonight. Like, this game was there for the taking.
You know, sometimes...
As was Game 4.
But the playoffs, the great thing about the playoffs in all sports, but especially in basketball, is it tells you what you aren't. It tells you just clear as day what you're missing. And how embarrassing is it for me and others who, after Game 1, said, hey, the Celtics are a good matchup for the Milwaukee Bucks, and they might be better. No, they're not. Let's not say that ever again. Let's not say that they lost to a better team. They did not lose to or they lost to a team that they're better than. No, no, no. They lost to a superior team. It's not even...
They lost to a team, they had a better roster.
It's the difference between Wisconsin and Massachusetts. I mean, it ain't even close.
I mean, not only can you say Kyrie wasn't Kyrie, like, I don't even think Kyrie was the best point guard in this series. Like, he's getting outplayed by guys like George Hill and Eric Bledsoe.
Eric Bledsoe, yeah. George Hill had a great series. Kyrie was miserable. He was miserable in this series. And it's almost like they got swept It feels like they got swept.
Totally.
They lost 4 straight games.
They did, because once they lost a
2
game,
at home.
it was the end of their season.
All by double digits?
Yes, not competitive. They were not competitive. They haven't been competitive since game 1.
Oh, okay.
And they had Smart back tonight. They had Smart back healthy tonight.
Immediately following tonight's Celtics game, make sure that you stay.
Embarrassing finish to a disappointing season. Welcome into BST, Danielle Trotta, Michael Holly, DJ Bean. Tommy Giles will be with Sherrod Blakely, who's in Milwaukee, in just a moment, boys. So there's the game, there's the series. The Celtics failing to get to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since the 2015-2016 season. And then there's the future. Like, we were watching all the post-game interviews coming in, and you kind of see a team starting to unravel already, everyone kind of guessing what their future is. But let's focus on the game for a second. Of course you expected more. Of course you expected a stronger start. And rightfully so. I think a lot of the blame Brad Stevens is taking, but for me it falls on Kyrie.
Yeah, I mean, if you're supposed to be this big game player, which it's not you're supposed to be, Kyrie Irving was a big game player. We had every right to believe that this would not be a series-long thing for Kyrie, that when push came to shove and Kyrie had to take over a game, he would. Instead, we're watching the first half wondering, he's throwing up air balls, he's playing like maybe some of the worst basketball he's played since he's been a Celtic, and this is in the biggest moment. I don't know if he was checked out, I don't know if he's already checked out of Boston, but to completely lay down like that, I'm the idiot that kept thinking that at some point this team was going to do something great because the roster was so good and because it had a talent like Kyrie, and instead they come into a must-win and just totally lie down. I never felt watching this game that they were going to win.
There's so much going on with this team. I think Kyrie, I think you're right. I think he's got to be the face of it. The last 2 games, game 4 and game 5. Game 4 at home to save your season. Game 5 to extend your season, really, a little bit. 13 of 43 from the field for Kyrie Irving. 13 for 43 from the field. So they really were a sickening team to watch in this series, losing 4 straight to the Milwaukee Bucks. And what really got me tonight was the lack of effort, the lack of passion, the lack of urgency, the lack of smart basketball. And then afterward, I think that really tells you what the Celtics are all about, where Kyrie says, I'm looking forward to watching the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference. Hey, homie, I'm not looking forward to watching the Bucks in the Eastern Conference. How about you? I want to watch the Celtics.
He doesn't have time to be disappointed, but he has time to watch the.
I'm looking forward to watching the Bucks. And then you heard Jaylen Brown saying, I'm 22 years old. I got my whole future ahead of me. You had Terry Rozier saying, hey, no comment when asked about his future. So ultimately, you have a team. They have Celtics on the front of their jerseys, but they're all going in 100 different directions.
Before they all get on the plane.
And this
Marcus
is why.
Morris talking in past tense.
He does that every year, though.
This is why
Marcus Morris always thinks he's gone.
This is part of the reason they underperformed all year.
Disappointing season, to say the least.
Speaking of disappointing, Tom Giles, everybody.
You said it
Embarrassing
the right way.
To a disappointing year. Tommy Giles has more.
Thank you, Danielle. DJ, you can go screw. Let's bring in Sherrod Blakely and get more on this disappointing end to a Celtics 2018-2019 season. And Sherrod, kind of take us inside.
What was more painful, the loss or the press conference afterwards? Kyrie Irving.
The loss.
What?
We're used to those press conferences.
No accountability.
Yeah, are we used to from him? Like,
yes, yeah. I continue to not listen to I don't read into what he says.
You know what
it's nonsense. It's nonsense.
No. Okay.
His thing about, like, I just want to get back to Boston, to sleep and stuff.
What are you going to pay attention to? If you're going to pay attention to what he says, and he's shooting, 13 for like 100 in the last 2 games, like what are we paying attention to?
There's not much good, Mike. There's not much good to take from it. I'll tell you that. I'll give you that.
Just a couple quick things. I'm trying to get back to Boston.
Safely.
To go to bed
back to Boston safely.
Yeah.
Like, is he going, like, Pony Express? Like, how are you getting back to Boston? Is there something?
He's on the Fung Wah.
Is there something we don't know?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a chartered flight. It should be fine.
Well, hopefully he's fine.
Milwaukee to Boston, it should be fine. Second thing, I've never been down 1-4. I haven't felt this sting. Yes, you have. I saw the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was a part of the Cavaliers. I saw them overwhelmed by the Golden State Warriors a few years ago in the NBA Finals. Yes, you have felt that sting before. You've lost in the postseason. But with all this said, as annoying as he is, and as pathetic as he was in this series, on the court and off, because some of his performances at the podium were terrible, despite all of that, I don't want him to go. I don't want him to leave. Because I've seen it. I was telling Danielle before, I've seen this before. A guy who you listen to and you watch and he has awful body language and you say, that's not Celtic-like. I saw that in Paul Pierce in 2005 where he pretended to have a broken jaw and he came back and they got humiliated at home in Game 7. And then what happened a few years later? They trade for Kevin Garnett. They trade for Ray Allen. They win a championship. Pierce is holding up the Finals MVP trophy. And I was there last year. Stephen A. Smith, I was in the building. I was at the Garden when they raised the banner up top. They raised his number to the top.
We heard every year about how he's up.
It happens. The rehab can happen. But I would say,
but that's the key thing there.
It can happen. I would say he's got to accept that he needs to change.
Yeah, well, that is exactly it.
And that's a big
if. Exactly it. So despite everything you just went through there, and as frustrating as this entire season has been, and even the post-game press conferences and everything else, you still want him back.
I do.
And
it's hard to lose.
But he has to change.
Not on these terms, right?
I don't want him back. I'm with you.
Right.
We can't go through this again.
He's the best player. It was a bad mix, but he's the best player.
Was it? Why was it a bad mix, though? Why was it a bad mix? Because he's the one stirring the mix.
Well, he's not a good leader, and every time he spoke, he made things worse. So I'm not saying that he came out and
the best thing for the team when he divides the locker room, he doesn't show up in the postseason, and afterwards takes zero accountability and is impressing that he wants to come back here. Like, how is that good?
I'm just wondering if he's all that did that. I'm wondering if he's all that did that.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think that's why I said, Danielle, off the top, when you said you got to put it on Kyrie, I said Kyrie's got to be the face of it. He has to be the face of it. But there's so much going on under the hood of the Boston Celtics. He's a big part of it, but you can look at, Danny Ainge and his assessment of this team and this mix. It was a bad mix. You can look at Brad Stevens tonight. He said, I did a bad job as a coach. He's a part of it. Jason Tatum, maybe thinking he was in year 4, year 5.
Right.
But, you're coming off a successful rookie year, but you're not at that level that you think you're at right now.
He's high on the list of disappointments.
Gordon Hayward really giving you nothing in this series. I mean, really looking like a bad basketball player after looking like a good one against the Pacers. I mean, there's so many things going on. Terry Rozier not accepting the role. It's not just Kyrie.
No, it's not. But again, I think that under other circumstances, I think that he could have done a better job of bringing this group together throughout the season. So that's why I don't just dismiss it and say, now it's a bad mix. Like, it wasn't the right mix of players. I do believe, though, that you can't go with the same group of players in the next year because the damage is already done.
What were you going to say? How about
Jaylen Brown with some words that we caught on that post-game press conference?
Yeah, and that's another one where he said
the old guys got to learn too.
He said that I got a lot to learn.
Yes.
But some of the older players in his team have a lot to learn too. So there's still
older players, Marcus and Kyrie, Morris.
Months he's been holding that in.
So even at the end, even after losing 4-1, guys are trying to get their last spin in there. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this. I want you to remember what I have to say, just in case the narrative starts to go, to the right, to the left. I'm going to put you right back and forth.
We can't agree. If Kyrie's here, if Kyrie's back, whether it's Jaylen, I don't want to get too drastic and go up the ladder or anything, but whether it's Jaylen, whether it's whomever else, we're going to find out which guys didn't work with Kyrie.
That's
whether he leaves or someone else does.
Coming up next, the Celtics season over. Bruins moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals. We'll get you ready after the break.
Tonight's show is brought to you in part by Papa Gino's, official pizza of people who really like pizza. With our 3-cheese blend and dough made fresh here every day, Papa Gino's is the New England
Bank. All right, back here with Tommy Giles, Danielle Trotta, DJ Bean, and Michael Holly. Yes. They're in the Eastern Conference Final.
Yes, and not to get too far ahead of myself, I told you guys, Bruins, Sharks. Sharks win tonight. It's going to happen.
So you're just totally dismissing the Hurricanes?
Yes, yeah. This is going to be a Stanley Cup preview vlog. No, I think it's going to. I think it should be a relatively quick series, 4 or 5 games. A, the Bruins haven't totally turned it on. B, the Hurricanes do have their questions. They're not a great offensive team. They've stunk on special teams so far. Obviously, there's the question of the goaltending. This is not going to be a Bob versus Yeah.
Here's the other thing too. Like, Carolina really needs to try to get after the Bruins in Game 1 without Charlie McAvoy. Like, that's your best opportunity to get after the Bruins. And if the Bruins get a win in Game 1 against Carolina, you're playing from behind.
I would agree. Like that's your strategy. really run hard at them in game one, have them suddenly questioning, oh, I didn't know this guy was that good. I didn't know that they had this. I didn't know they were able to do this. Then maybe you're on your heels. You split games 1 and 2. You go back to Carolina. It's all exciting. I don't see it happening. 4 or 5 games. This will be the short series the Bruins have needed.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us. See you tomorrow.
Go Celtics.